Welcome to the NISM Masterclass. I am your host, Sashi Krishan. Our purpose at NISM is capacity building for the securities market ecosystem. And as part of this purpose, we sit down for a conversation with gurus of the securities market to understand and learn from their journey. Uh, I do hope that all of you who participate and attend and watch this masterclass will gain, significant insights from the conversation that we are going to have today. My guest today is J.N. Gupta, and Mr. Gupta is the founder and managing director of Stakeholders Empowerment Services, SES in short. And SES was set up in 2012, primarily, to help institutional investors analyze, the various corporate governance issues that, that were thrown up. And, they have the distinction of being the first SEBI recognized proxy advisor. And I have known Gupta ji since 2012. And welcome to the show, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. And I think you've had a ringside view of corporate governance in India. You've been in the business since 2012. But if you look at corporate governance in India itself, since 1995 till almost 2012, there were a large number of committees that were set up. I remember the Rahul Bajaj committee, and then I remember the Kumar Mangalam Birla committee, and then I remember the Narayana Murthy committee. But the real impetus in the corporate governance space came around 2012. That was that pivotal turning point, and you were there, and you had a ringside view at that point of time. So could you tell me what were those one, two big, sort of stimuli that changed this entire approach that we had to corporate governance? Was it the Companies Act 2013 and the SEBI's LODR that came out in 2015? It would be good to get a quick background on, corporate governance in India and how it's sort of moved over the years.
Thank you, Shachi. Thank you, NISM, for having me on this show. So, you have asked a very basic question on this issue, and it would be extremely difficult for me to pinpoint a thing because it's a evolving thing, corporate governance. And secondly, the issue is this, that you got to look everything in a very holistic manner. What has changed in the last 20, 30, 40 years? I have been a participant in securities market since 1981 when I was in State Bank, and I used to do a small investment in my things. So if I look at journey from that time to till, it's a sea change from what was the position in 1981 something. But let me pick small points and then we can weave a story on it. The issue is this, that earlier India, or we were like a frog in a well, insulated from all external environment. The moment Indian economy started opening up, when you had foreign investors coming, you had got all the investments coming into the various sector, export, import increases. So you were no longer insulated thing. So when you are no longer insulated, you can't dance in a different way than the others are dancing. So there was bound to be some sort of a transition from what governance practices you were having to what others were having Western world. So it was some sort of a dynamics of the trade, dynamics of the economy which brought the change. That was one part. The second part is this, as I always say as a former regulator, that the law keeps on evolving on two factors. One is the failure of existing laws. Second is the changes that happen. And I always give an example that electronic trading and demat changed the securities market very well. So that laws need to come from that. The second thing, the failures. Now I recall the biggest failure which was the trigger for this governance being the forefront was Satyam. Satyam episode which happened in 2008, early 2008, shook everybody this thing. And the biggest problem there was that look, here was not a small time company who was not being monitored by people. Satyam was having all type of institutional investors, all bankers were involved. They were on TV every day.
So if I may interrupt, actually Satyam got a Golden Peacock Award for corporate governance.
I will come to that. So the second thing is this, then they had auditors like PwC. So what happened? It shook everybody's faith in the system. And then what happened? It was a fast forward mode. Companies Act, new Companies Act was in the making for last ages, but then it got expedited.
So that was one pivotal point, the Companies Act 2013.
I would say it was a life-changing event as far as the Indian corporate governance is concerned. Then what happened? As things started changing, it was thought that why the failure is happening, why governance is at the bottom. And it was found that investors had a laid-back attitude. This laid-back attitude was the biggest problem. So SEBI came into the thing and they said that you mutual funds are investing money of millions of small investors, but if you are not doing your duty properly, if you are not taking the company to the task, not making the company do right things, then you are not playing your role. You are charging money from the investor, so you spend money to do something. So SEBI started saying that mutual funds should vote. The birth of proxy advisory in India was due to this circular where the SEBI said vote. The first company that started in this field was InGovern, then IIAS, and we were born only in 2012 after I had completed my innings in SEBI and started. Okay. So we were the third to start with. Okay. But what happened? Voting came in this. But as you know...
But you were the first to be recognized as a proxy.
Yeah, we were first to be recognized as a...
Right.
So what happened? Then when it started this, but you know in India, and I always say that when I was a child, if my father or mother would have said, okay, you have an option of studying or you are playing, I will go and play. So voluntary things never work. So one by one, SEBI tightened the voting thing.
And that's where the LODR then evolved.
So then they said, first they said vote, but then they said vote and disclose. Then they said vote, disclose and disclose rationale also. Then they said vote, disclose rationale and no abstain. That means you can't abstain. So it was gradually tightened.
Right.
Then what happened in the process, it was thought that something was missing. That while I am telling the investor to do something, I am not asking companies that what you need to do.
Right.
So earlier there used to be listing agreement. Listing agreement has no regulatory sanction, that it was not akin to regulation. So what happened? In order to force the company to do the way things ought to be done, the listing regulation became a new LODR, where it had the legal sanctity regulations of SEBI and it could be enforced through SEBI. Earlier, listing agreement was the agreement between the stock exchange and something, and the stock exchange, as it is being a regulator, so it was not having impact. Right. So that came into being. And as a result of that, other regulators also started following that the investor should vote and something.
Gupta ji, there are a set of widely accepted corporate governance principles. Like we talk about transparency, accountability, responsibility, independence, fairness, etc. So given all these regulations, given the Companies Act, there are a set of regulations that govern that. But as an investor, how do you actually determine whether a company is following these, let's say, good corporate governance principles?
Sachi, I think even if God was to evaluate away from the inside, probably God will not be able to evaluate things in that manner.
Okay.
We always say one very simple thing. What is good governance? Because if you ask 100 people, you will get million answers.
Okay. Not 100 answers, but a million answers.
Million answers.
Right.
Okay, because everybody is so confused.
Right.
I have only one answer.
Okay.
I say good governance is your behavior, the way you expect others to behave with you.
Right.
The moment I start behaving the manner in which I expect you to behave with me, I will be having a good governance. And I will give you an example. When you invest in my company, I am a company, you and other people have given me millions of dollars or crores of rupees, something like this. I am a trustee of that money. Now, if I say, okay, my son wanted to buy a Mercedes, I will say, okay, apni company se le lo. My son wants to go to world tour, chalo company finance kar degi.
The promoter needs to put himself in the place of the investor or the person who's given him equity money and say, how would I feel if I was treated in this way?
I always say that when you have money in your hand, spend this money as if it was your own and hard-earned money, and you are accountable to your wife and son for each penny you spend. Right. The moment you start doing that, see, I give a very simple example. When you are in a household, when you've got limited amount of money, family gathers around and say, we have got 10,000 rupees or 50,000, how we should spend this. So everybody's demand is something. So you spend so that you get the maximum benefit out of it. The way, if the board starts working on that basis,
right,
that is the real good governance. Otherwise, I will say, we can put everything into the theory. We say independent director. Now, independent director, there is no blood pressure type instrument where I can put it here and say, oh, your independence is 89% or 101%, something like that. There's nothing like that. So it has to be character, it has to be observed by your behavior and your action. And that is where we feel that whatever has been done, somewhere we are lacking in our character and trust, and we are not playing our role the way it is envisaged by investors, by law.
Right. So, just taking this corporate governance issue a little further, we do tend to believe that there is a positive correlation in the financial performance of a company with corporate governance. That means good corporate governance should lead to good financial performance. And is it true that if a company has bad corporate governance, it will have poor financial performance? Could you get these? Is this correlation, does it really exist? Because if it does exist, then there is that much more stake for a promoter to ensure that there is good corporate governance.
I will answer it in parts.
Right.
The correlation does exist, but it is extremely difficult to measure.
Okay.
And I will tell you why. Because no two companies are identical or congruent.
Right.
Everybody has a different business. Say, when if you're in steel making, you are different because process could be different, the raw material source could be different, raw material content could be different, your market could be different. So many things are there.
Correct.
So it's very difficult to say what is the delta that comes.
Correct. From good corporate governance.
Yeah, but delta is there.
Right.
Because it depends upon how well you are sourcing the material. Now, say for example, I am sourcing my material from my son-in-law.
Right.
Now, on face of it, it could be bad or it could be really good.
Right.
That is where you got to get into micro issue. And on a whole, on a broader sense, you will not be able to do it. But delta is there, and I will give an example. If you recall, you have been in the market for the last 30, 40 years. Till such time, Indian promoters had not understood the PE factor.
Right.
They used to withdraw money and show profit as less as possible. The moment they understood P factor of 20, 30, 40, so they found that if they take out 100 rupee, they are getting only 100. But since P is 20, so in valuation they are losing 20 times of 100. So if you see from mid 80s onwards, companies have started showing profit.
Right.
Today, appreciation of governance is not there. Governance is taken as a mandate of SEBI, as if SEBI is interested in the governance. It's not. The issue is very simple, and I always say that you take health insurance. Why you take health insurance? Do you want to become sick and use that insurance money? No, you don't want to become sick.
Correct.
You want to remain healthy.
Correct.
So you are paying a premium to remain healthy.
Correct.
The moment this concept comes into the mind of promoters or management, that good governance, compliance, exemplary governance is to ensure your health and longevity, the mindset will change. Today, if you talk to 100 people, they say, oh God, SEBI is doing this much compliance, we are busy with compliance. But then you put it in something, the moment doctor tells that you should do exercise, you leave everything half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, you do exercise, doctor says, go and take sunlight for vitamin D, you sit in the park for half an hour.
Right.
So you do that for your health. Same thing you ought to do for your company's health.
In this entire space, given that the promoters don't see, I mean, there's nothing tangible for them to understand the relationship between good corporate governance and the financial benefits. So how does what can the institutional investors do to sort of make them realize that good corporate governance actually is very, very important for you? Because today the domestic investors and the foreign investors together own something like 40-50% of most of the large Indian companies. And are they engaging actively with promoters and managements to ensure that there is good corporate governance, or are they just saying that we're just owners of the shares and that's therefore we don't have a further role to play?
It is not a case that people do not know what is the good governance premium. Everybody knows it. See, I am not the only born intelligent person in the world. There are hundreds and millions of people who are more intelligent than me.
Right.
Everybody is aware of this thing. That is one part. The second part is this. I feel that governance is a long-term issue.
Right.
By the time I transit myself from this governance level to this highest governance level, I will miss the opportunity.
Okay.
So there is always a tendency for race to the bottom because I want to encash. And I will give you a simple example. During COVID,
Okay.
if everybody wanted to work in ethical manner, they would not have made money because the COVID would be over by 2 years. So everybody wanted to use this 2 years opportunity to encash money. So this is where the problem is, short term versus long term. Coming back to your issue of the investors.
Yeah, the institutional investors and
institutional
the role that they can play to sort of nudge managements and promoters towards corporate governance.
I will tell you so. It's a fact. When I started in 2012, the concept of proxy advisory voting was a new concept.
Correct.
So when I used to go and meet people, they say, look, why should I spend my time and money in correcting behavior of Sashi?
Okay.
If I don't like Sashi, I don't invest
I will
in
vote
this company.
with my feet and exit.
So my counter argument was that it is going to be a sure recipe for disaster.
Okay.
Because today, out of 4,000 listed companies, you only have 200 listed companies in your radar.
Right.
Now, if a 200 listed company, 10 are like J.N. Gupta who are not doing something good. Right. So you get rid of J.N. Gupta, so you become
your universe shrinks from 200 to 180.
So sooner or later, you will be shrinking from 190 to 20.
Right.
Now, what is going to happen? When you shrink from 190 to 20, it is not only you, it will be everybody will be doing things. So entire industry will be concentrating only on few industries. You will drive the P factor of those industries very high, but returns will not come because of your investment, the company is not going to perform better. So it is always required that you should increase your horizon.
Right.
Once you increase your horizon and you work, so it's like this, that you work like a child, that if the child is not behaving well, you talk to the child that this is your problem, do something. If after nudging 10 times he doesn't behave, then kick him off.
Right.
But you got to nudge the thing. So that is what the transformation has happened. And with the stewardship code coming into being, the investors are really nudging. As you can see, there are the two ways you can see that this is happening. One, many times the companies are withdrawing the resolution or changing the resolution, or if it is not happening, investors are showing dissent by voting against, and sometimes resolutions get rejected.
So you're saying that the accountability of the board now is increasing because of the institutional investors playing a more proactive role.
Yeah, accountability of the board is increasing not only because of the investors, it's because of the regulations also,
Right.
and transparency that has come. Because what has happened, a much more bigger change that happened in the last 10 years is the social media.
Right.
Today, regulator may not be aware, stock exchange may not be aware, journalists may not be aware, but some disgruntled person from somewhere will write that Jane Gupta was wearing the black jacket. So people will be aware. So this type of thing has changed. So these are the pressure points.
Correct.
I feel sad that we have become habitual of working only after pressure points are applied.
Correct.
It is not coming from within.
So therefore, you are saying that many of these people could be retail investors also. So the retail investors also have a role in sort of influencing corporate governance, maybe not directly because they may not have access to the board, but through highlighting some of these issues.
No, I will tell you, that is what it should be ideally true.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in India, as of now, retail participation is abysmally low.
Okay.
Abysmally low. And that is the reason for corporate governance to be not of the highest order.
Okay.
Because what happens if I feel, it's like this in an election also. If 60% people don't vote, then anybody who can garner 20% vote will win, with promoters having equity which is there. So if retail participation doesn't matter, the leverage that is available with the institutional investor is low. The second thing, whatever retail investors activism we have seen, it is mostly related to one-to-one issue, or it is some sort of a motivated thing. It is not coming from the general.
Okay, not from a genuine interest to improve corporate governance. That's what you think. But sir, given the fact that you said that social media has now become so powerful, the retail investor now at least has a medium to use to surface such kind of issues. And they can use that if they want to.
Sashi, the issue is very simple, that unfortunately we have retail investors, but I would not be able to put a percentage, but it is only very small percentage who is aware of what is the company, how the company operates.
Right.
If you take a survey of 100 random retail investors and you ask them what is a special resolution, what is an ordinary resolution, what is a special business, what is ordinary business, what is the definition of independent director, or what is related party transaction, I can bet that not more than 5 or 10 would be able to answer the question correctly. The issue that I have been always saying is this, that while the Companies Act, LODR, ICDR, everything has brought everything there, but it has not been able to bring the knowledge to retail investors. And there are two reasons for it. One, we have been following the models of teaching retail investors which have been age old as something. The second is the retail investor बोलता है कि मुझे क्या करना है यार, मैं क्या कर लूँगा.
So how important is my vote?
Yeah, so that is, so retail investor है. फिर secondly है कि यार मेरे को 50 रुपया डिविडेंड मिलता है, I get 50 rupees dividend. Now why should I pay to SES or IAS 100 rupee for a report.
Right, exactly.
So
Right.
it's a cost benefit analysis, time analysis, knowledge issue. So it's all. So we have, I'll tell you, we have to cover. I would say, as far the retail participation is covered, we have not covered even 5% of our journey.
Right. So just coming back to institutional investors, segue that I wanted to take. So some of these retail investors sometimes don't, what do you call it, contribute towards corporate governance because there could be, conflict of interest issues. There could be sort of information asymmetry. Some of the large investors have got access to information. Some of the smaller institutional investors may not have access to information. And then most importantly, as you rightly said, many of them have got short to medium term objectives. I need to generate returns in the short to medium term. So the best thing is, why get involved in, these corporate governance issues? So they, rather than voicing their opinion, many of them opt, as you rightly said, to exit those this thing. And you've been advising them that may not be a very good sort of way of doing things because it just keeps shrinking the universe in which you can invest in.
Such I would say, things have changed.
Okay, they have now.
Now they are not exiting.
Okay, they are.
See, it was an issue way back in 2010.
So what has
11.
changed?
So things have changed for two reasons. One is this: if you look at the growth of institutional investors, the asset under management, it has been phenomenal.
Right.
So what happens when you got, I will give an example that sometimes you see that mutual funds say that we have stopped accepting money in the scheme.
Right, exactly.
Because they do not have avenues to
invest. Right.
So if they would have continued their exit policy, probably they would have to shut their branches because they cannot cope up with the money inflow. Since the money inflow is this thing, I will give an example. We started the company in 2012. We had only 135 companies in our coverage.
Right.
This year we have done 990 companies.
Right.
So you understand that people have enlarged their investment portfolio from not only 500 companies to almost 1,000 companies. These are the institutional investors here.
Right.
So that thing luckily, fortunately has changed, that nobody is exiting unless until it is a gone case.
Right.
It is a case which has gone to...
Okay. People try to say that let's get the company to embrace good corporate governance rather than exiting.
I will give a simple example. Couple of years back, we had a call from a prominent mutual fund.
Right.
We said that, sir, you guys have voted against the promoter's remuneration.
You have recommended a vote.
Yeah, against.
Right.
The promoter is sitting in my office. Can you advise us what would be the right remuneration in which you will say?
Right.
So this type of interaction has started happening.
Okay.
The institutional investors are calling the management and saying, this is the issue which is there, change it, else we vote against you.
Right.
So that is where the fear of vote against is there.
Right.
Is it? And another thing has happened. 2012, when I used to talk to companies, ki kya hai, so they will shut the phone on my ear and say, who the hell are you?
Right.
Today, months before we release our report, they call us, ki, aap kya kar rahe ho? What is it? Do you need any information?
Right.
So things have changed.
Okay.
But this is only from the institutional investor perspective. But retail, it has not changed. And even in institutional investor perspective, see, we Indians are unfortunately not blunt. Even if I do not like you, in front of you, I will say, oh, you are the best man in the world, or something like this. Mm-hmm. Okay. We will have to somehow get it. Business is business. Personal relationship is personal relationship.
Right.
That two should not be mixed.
So you talked about this universe which you cover has expanded to 1,000 companies.
Yeah.
Now, today about 30% of Indian GDP is now small and medium enterprises, the SMEs. And there is a real concern about the corporate governance practices that are being followed in the SMEs. And I do understand that there are a large number of challenges that they face. One is obviously, independent directors. They don't get good independent directors because they are small and they're really not mainstream companies. Two, the promoters themselves wear different hats. That promoter is not only a promoter, he's also a manager of the company, he's also on the board, so he wears multiple hats at different points of time. Thirdly, I mean, the board itself has a little, I mean, let us say their understanding of, finance and the financial statements is also not as evolved as, some of the large boards. So, what, in your opinion, should be done to improve the corporate governance practice in those, small and medium enterprises, as well as those companies beyond those 1,000 companies, which are the large ones where institutional investors are investing in?
As I say, the governance is related to the health.
Right.
So there is no reason why somebody should not be using a good toothpaste because that person is small.
Right.
So for me, governance standards cannot be diluted for something, because if right at the beginning you get habituated to lesser governance, something like this, when you grown up you don't have. So you have to something. The issue here is this cost versus something. No, we will have to find some
Cost versus the benefits of putting in these governance systems.
The ability for the small company to absorb the governance cost given their small size.
Right.
The second part is knowledge. So this is where somehow we got to think of innovative method of imparting knowledge to SME.
Okay.
It's something like that. Secondly, we may think of some innovative method that how do we provide a good board to SME without costing them something. Ultimately, if we feel that we need to encourage SME in order to bring India at par with the world and growth and something like this,
Correct.
we will have to do something. See what happened, if I give you a direct subsidy, probably you will go and buy a Gucci shoes or Gucci something. It's not. I have to give you a qualitative support. And that we have to think how we can give qualitative support to SME.
So who will give the support to the SMEs? Let me ask you this question.
Let us say who can give.
Yeah.
Now, which is the vehicle through which SME is coming into prominence? One is the stock exchange.
Yeah, they're getting listed now.
Yeah. Other is the ministry. Third is the regulator. I would say stock exchange could be the best platform which can provide knowledge inputs, guidance as for the governance. They cannot provide you business guidance. How do you sell your product? No, they can only provide you guidance, training and everything.
So if I may interrupt you, Gupta ji, what I hear you saying is that you could have an institution like the stock exchange that creates a pool of independent directors who are good at their job and available to the SMEs, and allow the SMEs to sort of pick from that pool so that they get a good board, and also then do a series of initiatives to equip the SMEs to understand what good corporate governance is.
And I would say that you are also one of the better institutions to do this.
So most definitely, yes.
So my point is this: SME cannot afford to pay to the directors.
Right.
So somewhere we got to find revenue or to fund all these activities.
Right.
And this activity can come from the investor development, whatever it may be, I do not know. Okay. But I would say this is the thing. The idea is, see, you cannot think in isolation.
Right.
When you having a big picture, you will identify where the canvas there is a blot. We got to remove that blot and make the picture look really good.
Okay.
That is what we need to do.
So let me just go back to this previous conversation that we had about stewardship. So the regulators have mandated a stewardship code for AMCs, for insurance companies, for pension funds, etc. Do you think that this stewardship code has actually helped improve the corporate governance practices? And if so, how has it helped improve this corporate governance?
I would say that it is evolving.
Okay.
It is happening. But if I have to give marks to myself, that if I was the institutional investor, right, I will not be giving myself distinction.
Right.
Because what happens, it's a issue where it involves time, it involves energy, and many times it has no outcome.
Right.
It has no outcome.
It doesn't add to, say, the mutual fund returns, for
Yeah,
example.
it doesn't, no, it doesn't result in no outcome also.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, if I want to remove somebody,
From the board, okay.
I can't.
Because your vote
So
doesn't.
I feel that it was a wasted. So sometimes you feel that if whatever I may do, it is not going to result in what something like this.
Right.
So this type of things are happening, but positively changes are happening, because when we have a system where we do daily monitoring of 2000 companies on the governance issue, and we have mutual funds our client, so we tell them that these are the governance issue, and mutual fund comes back to us, talks to us, so that is happening.
So when you talk about this evolution, I remember you said that, in the stewardship code, once it was introduced, it started first with making voting compulsory.
Yeah.
Then it moved on to saying that make the necessary disclosures. Then you said that after you have made these disclosures, please
Rational.
give us the justification.
Yeah.
But stewardship code is much more than voting, right?
Yeah, it's much beyond that.
Yeah. So what are those other steps that you think that
I-
institutional investors should embrace?
I would say voting is the end point.
Okay.
Stewardship code is prior to that.
Okay.
So what happens, say for example, we have got about 70 triggers,
Right.
which we give to the mutual fund.
Right.
Now, say for example, pledge of shares. Now, when a promoter pledges his shares, it's an event. Now, this event could be positive or negative, both. When a promoter is pledging his shares for borrowing related to the company's business, we say it is a positive or benign pledge, because it shows that the promoter is putting all his eggs in the company. But when the promoter pledges the shares and buys the yacht or aircraft or his son's business, then we say it is a negative effect, because promoter is showing less interest in the company and withdrawing money and certain things. So we always say economic interest versus political interest. So while promoter continues his political interest in the sense of voting power, his economic interest is reducing because the risk is passed on to the lender. So when we do this, then the investor, the mutual fund, analyzes this, that what is the impact on this. Then they talk to mutual fund, the promoters, and ask them what is the reason when. And if you see, there are many companies where because of the promoter pledge, their P factor is much less as compared to their peers.
Okay. So that means more importantly is that this constant interaction
It's
that
happening.
these institutional investors need to have with the company promoters and management on many of the other issues.
See, I would say that if you go back 10 years back and look at the stock exchange announcement, there were hardly any investor interaction. The company used to say that we are meeting this investor something. It was whatever used to happen behind the curtain.
Right.
Today, if you see, every day there will be at least 15, 20 announcements that this company is going to meet this investor, something like this. So that is how the interaction between the company and investor has increased. Secondly, if you have seen, there are various companies which have mushroomed, which are the investor relation companies, which act as a bridge between the company and the investors.
So you were talking about this pledge of shares, which got me thinking. See, as a proxy advisor, your role is basically to advise, the institutional investors as to what your view is on a particular event or an action that the management or the promoter is taking. So there are two types of things that could happen. One is, regulatory and compliance related. And those are more or less in black and white, because there are some do's, there are some don'ts. The compliance and regulatory environment is very clearly specified. But the others are a little more fuzzy. Those relating to corporate governance. Like, for example, is a pledge of share good, or is a pledge of share bad? Or is this kind of a transaction, say a takeover transaction, good, or a takeover transaction bad? So how do you then form an opinion on those kind of issues?
So see, we are
as
very
a proxy advisor.
Yes, we are very clear. We say that we are not expert in running the business.
Right.
we cover 1,000 companies, then if we say that we are much more knowledgeable than the 1,000 boards, we will be fooling you.
Right.
So we say we are not expert in running the business. We also say that we do not have the knowledge and wisdom of the board.
Right.
Third, we do not have the future because the board has all the projections. So we are devoid of anything which will make us take a decision whether the transaction is good or bad.
Right.
But we have a duty. So we examine the transaction only on following parameters: whether disclosures are proper to make a investor take a informed decision.
Okay.
If we find that some disclosure parameters are not there, which are inhibiting it, like this, when I write an exam and my teacher had given me a problem, and then I say, oh, this data is missing, unless this data is given, say for example, when you are doing things, pi r square, so pi की value नहीं दी है, so I cannot take that pi value, I cannot solve this thing.
Okay.
So that is the disclosure issue. Then we examine it on the fairness part.
Yeah.
That how fair is the transaction.
So isn't that a judgment call, fairness?
That I'm saying, the fairness is a judgment call, yes or no, both. It is not a rocket science to understand whether the transaction is fair to all or is beneficial to you.
Of few people, okay.
So we only examine transparency, fairness and disclosure part.
Okay.
We do not do anything into judgmental. Say for example, whether a company wants to buy a pharma company, I don't know a damn whether pharma is run like this or something. I don't know which equipment.
You don't understand the business.
I don't understand the business. I only understand that if I am an investor, I need these parameters to answer. And if those parameters are missing, then we should look into the parameters also.
Right.
Secondly, if you have given a parameter which apparently on face of it is wrong, then I will say it is wrong.
Okay. Very good. So fair enough. So just looking at this LODR, which we were discussing this thing. So this regulation 23 of the LODR talks about related party transactions, and very often much of the observations that you as SES and other proxy advisors have are around related party transactions, and whether these related party transactions are bona fide or mala fide or material or not material. And we're seeing increasing number of such related party transactions. So how do you take a view on, say, something like related party transactions?
See, I will say fundamentally, I find, and it is a very controversial statement,
Okay.
but I find there is nothing wrong in related party transaction.
Right.
In fact, related party transactions are better than non-related party transaction.
Okay.
But this is a catch on this, why I am saying.
Right.
Say for example, you want to construct your house.
Okay.
And your brother has a cement agency.
Right.
Why you should not buy cement from your brother? Why you should buy it from J.N. Gupta?
Right.
Why something? So this is. Secondly, when in a home, we all 4 or 5 sit down and take a decision, it's all a related party transaction. The issue there is different, that you are dealing with your money.
Okay.
But when it comes to company, you are not dealing with your money, you are dealing with someone else's money also.
Right.
So as long as your decision is on related party transaction is to ensure that all the stakeholders are benefiting, related party transactions are good.
Okay.
The moment in related party transaction, there is a chance that I may benefit, or my son may benefit, my uncle may benefit, or my neighbor may benefit, this transaction is a mala fide. So since any mala fide, related party transactions are good because you have more control.
Right.
You have more certainty. You have more negotiable power. But the moment factor mala fide comes in between, then related party transactions are worse. So we analyze related party transactions only from that perspective, that whether all disclosures are made, whether the transaction is fair, and secondly, the biggest question we asked is that why the hell you are entering this transaction with Sashi only, why not with J and Gupta?
Okay.
If I get answer like this, many a times if you see the structures of the companies are such that their survival is not possible without a related party transaction.
True.
Now, say for example, Tata Motors. If you say that Tata Motors should buy steel from JSW, not from Tata Steel, it will be unfair.
Right.
The fairness would be that Tata Motors should tell the investor that I have this system of ensuring that Tata Steel is giving me better terms than any of the steel manufacturer. I have no problem.
Right.
The problem is convincing the investor that you are not having any mala fide in between.
So another question relating to this, not related party transaction, but coming out of the RODR was this appointment of independent directors. And you did mention earlier that there is no device that you can put in and say, Ki, are you truly independent or not? But very often, the institutional investors and the retail investors need to take a call as to whether somebody is independent. And what is that contribution that that independent director can make to the board and to the audit committee? Because those become very important in terms of the direction this corporate governance will take. So, how do you form a view on that?
Sashi, if you ask me where is God, probably I will be able to answer better than
Okay.
finding what is a good independent director.
Correct.
But the fact is this, that if you look at the law is very clearly envisaged that what is your role as an independent director.
Right.
But unfortunately, we find that that role or code of conduct has been put to the back burner. And I will give you a couple of examples. And I always say that the Companies Act has provided code of conduct for independent directors. And generally, if not all, but 90% independent directors are post 55 years of age.
Right.
But rest could be something. The code of conduct has nothing which one doesn't know from inner self. We know. And that is where I always say that it is a very thin line dividing what is independent, what is not independent. Relationship doesn't matter. And I always give an example. Me, my son, my wife are closely bonded. But tomorrow my son comes to me for a advice or a decision, which is for his future. Will I give him an independent advice or will I give him a biased advice so that his venture fails? I will give him an absolutely independent advice despite my blood bond. The issue is that why should I put my love and affection for my child before his future? No. So that is where the problem comes in the independent director. It is in the character. Now, where the problem comes is this, that we have got two different concepts. One school of thought says that opposition of something is independence. I don't agree. By agreeing with you, I don't become non-independent also. I have to use my head, my experience in making something. And that is where I say there is an absolute, I will not say 100%, but a large failure of this. And I will give you a couple of examples. Nomination and Remuneration Committee is majorly independent. Now, Nomination and Remuneration Committee is supposed to decide remuneration in a fair manner. Now, if I am an independent director, I get 1 lakh rupee commission and you are a promoter, non-executive director. If you are paid 10 crore rupees commission, then am I not indirectly acknowledging that I am evaluating myself 1,000 in capability compared to you?
Okay.
So if I'm 1000 in your capability, why the hell I am sitting here? If I am not capable, why? So if you look at the remuneration practice, you will find that there is a tendency among independent directors to evaluate themselves much lower, and I always call it the colonial tendency कि आप बड़ा साहब हो, गोरा साहब हो, आपको 10 करोड़ मिलता है, मुझे तो दो वक्त की रोटी दे दो तो मेरा काम चल जाएगा. This colonial mindset is still existing. So that is where the independent. The second thing is this. If you look at the code, they say that independent directors have to bring the best practice into the practice.
Into the business, yes.
Now the issue is this, that in one company you say that this is the best.
Right.
In this company, in my company, you are keeping silent.
Right.
And I give an example. There was a big failure couple of years back where you found the risk management committee had not met for 3 years. Whereas those people who have members of the risk management committee in that company which not met for 3 years, where risk management committee members in other companies are meeting every quarter.
Okay.
So they failed to bring that risk management practice into this company.
Correct.
So this is where I would say that unless until independent directors exert, if you look at the data, and you talk to everybody, people say the risk of independent directors is very high. And I say it is all humbug.
Okay.
There is no profession in this world where the risk is not high.
Right.
You go to a bank, the person who sits on the teller, his risk is very high compared to independent director, because if that person makes one wrong payment, his 1 month or 6 months salary is gone.
Right.
And his career is gone. If it was a real risk, then independent directors should have been quitting here and there, something like this. In last 5 years, hardly 4 or 5 independent directors have quit saying something wrong.
Okay.
And recently there was a case in one company where independent director quit citing governance issue.
Right.
But if you analyze that, you find it is a motivated, because his term was coming to end in 3 years and he was 80 plus.
Right.
So nobody would have been giving him any independent directorship. So he said, okay, let me become a hero in that thing. So these are the wrong things that is happening.
Right. Gupta ji, this regulation 34 of the LODR talks about BRSR, that is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. Now, basically, everybody understands the framework, like it's broadly, environmental, social, governance, responsible business practices, etc. But for an investor, how important is BRSR, and how does he interpret a BRSR report that is now part of the statutory reporting that corporates need to make? And you've been part of some ESG committees, etc.
Yes,
part of setting up these regulations.
So you are asking a question that how does the investor interpret the BRSR report?
Right.
See, it is like this. You are asking an investor to interpret the end year accounting balances,
Right.
which is impossible. If you say that rather than giving the investor a balance sheet or profit and loss account, you give the investor trial balance. Okay, this is the trial balance of my company, you interpret. So BRSR is nothing, but BRSR is the data points that is mandated by SEBI for reporting. So as it is, the data points cannot be interpreted unless until you look into the past or you look into the peers. So BRSR is just one information system which gives birth to analytical tools to give something. And in general, at present what is happening, the BRSR is the mainstay based on which the ESG ratings are provided.
Correct.
So rather than trying to interpret the BRSR, investors have to read the ESG reports which are coming out. In ESG report, you see what has been your changes from the past and something, and where do you stand industry-wise, something like that.
So I've got two questions out here. So
Yeah.
one, you talked about the ESG score and looking at the ESG practices of a company. Now, how important is ESG? Because today there is quite a bit of debate about whether ESG is important. Is it overhyped? And more importantly, I still remember when we used to study economics. Milton Friedman once said that primarily it is profitability that corporates should focus on and not social good. And that I mean, obviously maybe that was 100 years back, but taking a cue from that, most corporates seem to think that profitability is my sort of dharma, and should I really be looking at social good and ESG?
Okay. You have to look into the things in a very holistic manner. 100 years back, it could be said that forget about social, concentrate on profit.
Right.
Because then you could have made people work for 20 hours. If you are not ready to work for 20 hours, he will be ready to work for 20 hours. I don't have to provide you clothes. I don't have to provide you uniform. Things have changed. The society has become a bit more conscious. There are protections available. That is one part. But most important part is this. Let us look into what is E, S, and G.
Right.
E is environment, S is the social, G is the governance. Now, why the hell or what for we are bothered about environment? It is not that suddenly I have started liking hills, rivers, sea, something. It is because if I did not start caring for it today, I will not survive tomorrow. So it is for my survival that I have to do on E. How E will be done is through the G. Good governance will take care of E, and ultimately S is saved. So we at SES say that G is the engine, driver, E is the medium, S is the destination.
Okay, that's a very good way of putting it. Actually.
Yeah. Because I have to protect the society.
Right.
Now the issue is this, the companies feel, and if you look at the data, you will find that most of the ESG funds are not performing better compared to non-ESG fund.
Right.
And answer is very simple. Any company which is not concentrating on E or S today is not going to last long. It is the investment into the future. It is like this, that when somebody invests in a machine, that machine doesn't operate 100% time. But that is the investment in future to drive the competitor away.
So this future broadly is where the sustainability part comes in.
That's what I'm saying. And I give an example. See, we cannot look into ESG in isolation. We have to work together. And I give an example. We say the coal is bad. Coal causes pollution. The easiest thing is this: shut down all coal mines. Now, what is going to be the social cost of that? Coal India appoints at least 10 lakh people. 10 lakh people have at least 40 lakh people in the family. But those 40 lakh people are supporting the ecosystem of 2 crore people because their wages and something are helping. So if you shut Coal India, you are impacting 2 crore people.
Right.
Now those 2 crore people are going to be catastrophe socially.
Right.
So you cannot shut Coal India. You will have to always. The other thing I say, that people have a habit of comparing कि यार शशि का ESG स्कोर A+ है, JN गुप्ता का B- है. बट यू डोंट नो, शशि जो है अपनी IT कंपनी चला रहा है, JN गुप्ता अपना सीमेंट बना रहा है. Now both are important for the thing.
For the economy.
Okay. Now we are unable to capture that सीमेंट में मैं IT कितना यूज कर रहा हूं. जो मैं आपका IT सिस्टम यूज कर रहा हूं, why I should not appropriate my
Part of
pollution
those,
to you.
Exactly.
The other thing which is short-sighted, this EU ने टैक्स लगाया है on pollution or environment tax. Now understand, India is making chemicals or cement or whatever it may. For whom? For
For
export.
the EU. Yeah.
So whether the producer should be penalized or user should be penalized. So ESG will survive only when we get a method of taxing the user, not taxing the producer, because then we are disturbing the S factor very much.
Somewhere I read, and this was a quote that was attributed to you, which said that risks never travel alone.
Yeah.
Rewards are its permanent companion.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, what happens is everybody's looking at the rewards, right? And therefore, they tend to ignore these risks. I mean, and many of these risks are primarily coming out of corporate governance issues. I mean, recently we've seen a large number of unlisted companies, for example, who have got serious corporate governance issues, and some of them are, in the tech space, not necessarily in the cement space or those polluting industries. They're even in the tech space, where there are corporate governance issues of maybe of a different nature. So, if I were an investor, what are those early warning signals I should be looking for to try and understand whether this is a company that embraces good corporate governance principles, and this is a company that is really not too concerned about good corporate governance?
See, this is a very, very difficult question to answer, because
That is why I'm asking you, because you are the only person who can answer that question.
It cannot be bucketed into a small thing.
Right.
Because there are a million known factors and jillion unknown factors.
Correct.
But generally, what has to happen is very simple, but this could be a trap also. Generally, we look at the companies which are very prompt in their disclosures.
Right.
Say, for example, a company which waits till the 15th of the next month, of the 45th day, for declaring their quarterly result. We put a question mark that why. It's like this. When I was a student, my assignment was to be submitted on Saturday 5 o'clock. I will submit at 4:49 or 4:59. That was the student time. So and I was not a good student. So that's what I'm saying. That is the measure we do. Other is the quality of disclosures. Now, again, the problem, if you are looking it from the retail investor's perspective, it's a Herculean task, because retail investor doesn't even, many of them, I will not say all, but a major portion of them do not understand how to read a balance sheet, how to read profit and loss, how to read cash flow, and notes to the account is not read by many knowledgeable people also.
Right.
So it is where, if you are an expert, you will find parameters like this, that how much information is hidden in the notes. If you find that information that is hidden in the notes is very minimal, that means you are more transparent. If you are giving your disclosures timely, you are more transparent. If you have not been warned or given penalty by regulator or stock exchange, your reputation. So these are, it's like this. I always say, I evaluate myself as a student.
Right.
What made me a good student? Who used to come in time, who was clean, who respected their teachers, who performed very well in this thing, and all these things. So these are the same parameter you got to use in evaluating a corporate or balance sheet.
For good governance practices. Right. Thank you so much, Gupta ji, for sparing time and sharing your valuable thoughts and the journey that you had in this, entire corporate governance space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sashi, and I hope it would be useful.
Right.